Angela Merkel wants you to think of her as an angel. For a while, she was the unassailable Queen of Europe. Yet time has been taking the shine off that halo and has been damaging that legacy. The once unassailable Chancellor of Germany, who sat atop German politics for more than a decade, well, for 15 years, she's got a new book out. And yes, she wants you to know that she did nothing wrong. Her cozying up to Russia and pushing ahead with the Nord Stream 2 oil and gas pipeline, that was not a mistake. Closing down nuclear power stations, even as an energy crisis reared its ugly head, that was not a mistake. And of course, whittling down the German armed forces capabilities, having German soldiers do NATO exercises with broomsticks rather than guns, also not a mistake. Perhaps most consequently of all, allowing in 1 million refugees in 1 year alone in 2015, not a mistake. Allowing in well over hundreds of thousands in the following year, also not a mistake. The response to the migrant crisis of 2014, 15, 16, not a mistake. Is there really going to be a moment when we sit back and think, hang on, have these politicians got something more to think about than preserving their own legacy? At what point do we want to look at the record of politicians and suggest there should be some critical thinking be applied here, some lessons learned for the future? Let's go through these in turn. The German economy has suffered more than any major European economy in the last 3 years. Why? Its manufacturing decline has been precipitous. The once heartbeat of Europe, the once manufacturing and exporting powerhouse, has been in recession for the best part of the last 2 years. The confidence of its manufacturing sector has declined, all because of one main reason. Energy has become more and more expensive. Why has energy become more expensive? Simply supply and demand. Yes, demand has risen mildly given the increase in population, but more importantly, supply has contracted. Given the Russians' brutal invasion of Ukraine and the response to Russian energy, all of that cheap oil and gas that the German economy depended on can no longer be quite so depended on. And did they do anything at all to try and boost their own domestic, stable supply of energy? Absolutely not. Intermittent energy, yes, solar and wind, but stable baseload? No. They stopped producing so much nuclear power. Those stations are going to be turned off. They've tried to avoid using oil and using gas, although that has been pushed back given the intermittency of those renewable energy sources. So where have they fallen upon for such a large proportion of their energy mix? Coal, the dirtiest form of energy. If some of these European countries hadn't banned fracking, they'd be a lot cleaner. It's ironic, isn't it, that in an attempt to be green and ban natural gas exploration, it's actually pushed them to use the dirtiest form of fuel overall, coal. But it's not just energy, is it? It's also the sense of defence. Germany had whittled down its armed forces more than practically any nation, spending far less than the NATO minimum requirement of 2%. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why Vladimir Putin felt so emboldened to encroach upon his neighbouring countries, to take chunks out of Georgia, out of Ukraine, out of perhaps more countries besides. Is that why Vladimir Putin has felt so emboldened to carpet bomb the Middle East? Is that why Europe has felt so weak when it comes to standing up to autocracies? Could it be that the German policy on defence has really destabilised the wider world due to its influence on other European countries too? Well, That's not all, because clearly destabilization in the Middle East led to something else in the last decade. The huge movement of people, many millions, moving from boundary to boundary. The question has to be asked, was this crisis in human movement exacerbated by the open door policy of the German government? Did Angela Merkel's no borders policy, attracting millions of people to move across the European continent, make the problem worse, not better? Some people say so. And the ripple effects of the mass movement of people and settlement of people in Germany have clearly had wider effects since. The German government has collapsed in the last month. There'll be fresh elections in the new year. And what sort of fractured situation might the Bundestag end up in? Is this one of those ripple effects of such a large influx of people from the Middle East and North Africa, attracted in part by Angela Merkel's policies? And has this also destabilised other European countries as well? The siren call of Angela Merkel telling people to come to Europe, come to Europe. Has that led more people to come to other countries as well? Has that led to more refugees in Italy, more refugees in France, more refugees crossing the English Channel too? Angela Merkel wants you to think of her as an angel. And for a while, the halo around Angela Merkel shone bright. For a while, she was the unassailable Queen of Europe. Yet time has been taking the shine off that halo and has been damaging that legacy. Is that why Angela Merkel now wants to set out her own view in her own book? Quite possibly. But we should look at the record and the facts as they stand, not the spin that this politician wants to place on them. When the history books are written, I'm willing to wager we won't be taking Angela Merkel's word for her own legacy. We'll be looking at the facts on the ground. The economic damage, the cultural damage, the assimilation damage, and frankly, the global stability damage that the leadership of Angela Merkel wrought across Europe. I've been Tom Harwood for GB News. Don't forget to subscribe to the GB News YouTube channel for more.